Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to call the meeting of Community Development Authority for March 11th, 2021 to order. And the first item is the roll call.
Barker,
Here.
Barron,
Here.
Furlong,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Oaks,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
Weber,
Here.
and Brar is present.
Okay, awesome. Boy, that's great. All right, so the first item is the approval of the minutes. Looks like Abby did a great job. Need a motion to approve. Need a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move. Oh, second.
Okay, the motion has been made, it has been seconded, and Abby will know who they are.
Made by Barron, seconded by Oaks.
Okay, the way to go. Okay, so any questions or comments or any changes? Any questions or comments or any changes? Okay, the motion is to approve the minutes for February 11th, 2021 for the CDA. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. The next item is the financial reports. Abby.
Yes, so I included updated financial reports in your packet. The only thing that's not reflected here still is something that I think came up at the last meeting, and that's the interest on investments. We did get just over $8,000 last year on interest income, and it's not showing up here yet. Bill Burns, our finance director, reported that we earned just over 1%, and that the CDA's investments are pooled with other city resources, and they are invested in CDs and high quality bonds, but it's just how the transfer in hasn't occurred yet. The only item I just note is on downtown snow removal. We did do some targeted snow removal from the city terraces a few weeks back. When it started to warm up and we realized that there was going to be demand for outdoor seating, we targeted snow removal just to the businesses that have a sidewalk cafe permit with the city. So there are 7 or 8 businesses that have that. We didn't do it in front of the city buildings or the other properties, just the sidewalk cafe. And the reason we didn't do it for all of them is the cost is just over $12,000 when we do it from all the terraces in the downtown. They have to do it overnight. It's very expensive. So we decided to just do a minimal removal this time.
Any questions for Abby? Any questions for Abby? I think it looks pretty good. I did go through this and not too many changes. So Abby, do you need any motion to approve, or this is just more for information?
It's for information. You don't have to approve it.
Okay.
Abby, do we pay for the snow removal in the parking lots also when it does snow?
Yes, for the city owned parking lots, as well as the CDA owned parking lot that's next to the fire station. The CDA pays for those still. That's something that we've had on the list of things that really should be a general city operating expense, and our public works department requests it in the budget every year and it gets taken out.
Well,
And we pay to have it done by Middleton Station too. They pay the lease of the rent on those spots, and we paid for it to be removed from there. Is
By
part
the
of that.
skate park, yes.
Yeah.
B&E is our contractor for that. Brett Nardi, he handles
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. But that can be done during the day and whenever needs, right? Or-
Yeah, the really tricky one is the terraces, because they can't have any vehicles parked on the street when they do it. And so they have to do that one overnight.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions for Abby? Okay, then we move on to the next item. That's D. She's going to talk about the gardens.
Yeah, and Dee put together an excellent proposal, which I included in your packet. And at Mike's request, she put together a cost estimate for handling the western side of City Hall, that slope garden. And I included the full proposal in the packet. The cost is about $9,600 for the native plants and other materials that would be required.
9,060.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, cheaper.
It's a deal.
So, Dee, do you want to go through any of this, or how do you want to handle it?
I mean, I think the proposal pretty much speaks for itself. If folks had a chance to look at it, I'm certainly ready to answer any questions about it.
Yeah, I will get started. So right now, would it look, is that something which you constructed, that picture right on the top if you go there? Or is that you just found it somewhere in catalogs and you just put it there?
Yeah, no, that's just an image to show kind of the rock garden style, that it's not really formal. It's not a wall in essence, but it's more scattered effect with the rocks. So no, that's just an image I found.
So that's not how it's going to look like then, right?
It's gonna look pretty close to that.
Pretty close. Now, you have a lot of slope there. How are you going to handle that slope?
Well, and that's part of using the boulders is going to, like I said, it's not a formal wall, it's not a formal terrace, but it will address, I'll have flattened areas and the boulders will actually kind of hold the grass in place. And as I mentioned in the proposal, the native grasses or the native plants are really, really good with erosion control. So when the plants are established, I mean, we will have some flattened areas, such as where the bench goes and that sort of thing. But it's still going to have the elevation. It's just going to be distributed differently.
So this is also a picture from the catalog. This is not how it will look like.
Yeah, it's a visualization that I put together.
So I know the benches right next to the Public Works Department there. So, and well, of course, so this is in the low part, or that will be where the, of course, I don't think there will be where the grass is now.
These.
No, yeah, that's that will stay the same. And so I'm pretty much using just the slope between the base wall and the grassy area.
So are you taking any part of the grassy area? Otherwise, I guess the people who will be sitting, you got those benches and upper part, they won't really see a whole lot. If you're just walking around there, what would you see?
Well, the one part of the grassy area, I wanted to put this in before I forget it. There is potential for using a very small section of it to create a path to get to this area, and potentially for people who use wheelchairs to be able to get there too. I think that's one thing in particular that I would like to include a path, but that it very much depends on kind of when we get there and when we're involved with the building and how it all works together. So it's basically going to be kind of the tumble down boulder look, a couple benches on each end as shown in this image. And so the rocks can be, sat on, or it can be basically just kind of holding the slope in place. And then the native plants will be growing around that.
So if you say the handicap path there, so considering the amount of slope, I think it's about 30 or 35 degrees. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't measured it. So how would you make it handicap accessible?
And I'm not sure if I can, but if I can, what I'm sort of envisioning is that a path would start from one end and go to the other end. So it would, and then it would come just slightly into the area itself. So if we can create, the appropriate slope coming into it, the path itself is going to be pretty close to the top. So it's, if we can't create a slope that is, this the certain percentage, what I'd like to do is create more of a space at the top and create a place where people who use wheelchairs can go, or strollers or that sort of thing. That just as the top, that you can still see all the flowers and you can see the layout. It just might not um, be able to completely be ADA accessible. So
So
if I,
right.
in essence,
Mhm.
if I put a path in, I want it to be accessible.
So right now, if you're on a grassy area, you don't really see a whole lot of it. So would you, by the way you're doing, you think that the people will be able to see more than what they do now? Otherwise, it's mostly will be, just the employees going in and out, and
Right.
not for the public. So then it just really doesn't seem to have a whole lot of value.
So the idea is that the existing sidewalk, and then there's stairs that go into it. So at the height of the stairs, try to be able to bring a path over. So you get to the top of the stairs, you either choose to go down the stairs or take the path that it's not existing yet, but that's how I would like to use maybe even a little bit of the grassy area just to bring people over to that area.
Wow. Considering that slope, you think that would be, well, anyway, so it's about, how much is the elevation difference? Is it about 6 feet or is it more like
I actually,
7?
I haven't been there for a while. I was just thinking about that today. If it's not possible to put a path in, it's still possible to have kind of that rock garden effect that has been used with many kinds of elevations. It's just how it's put together. And so if you have, rainwater or something that comes down, the idea is to set up the boulders in a way that it would have to take a meandering path down. The water would have to take a meandering path down, and then what's in between the rock clumps will be the plants. So if I can get in there and flatten out an area for a path, I'll do it. But if not, what I'll do is create a viewing point from the top of it, and benches too.
So you are trying to create a public garden, not more like just a private,
Yeah.
as it is. Are you going to make an effort to make that happen? Because right now it's more or less like public works, or people sitting there. I mean, the people from the top don't really see a whole lot of it. So
Mhm.
could it be made somehow so that all people can enjoy it, not just only people who are sitting down there?
Yeah. One thing that I noticed last year is when there were picnic tables put out there, that people routinely were using the picnic tables. And there were a few that were right close to the edge of the garden, of the proposed garden. And when you're sitting in that position, you can see the entire garden. You can see, the different levels basically of the garden. And as it is now, but hopefully, it'll be an improvement, the view that you see.
Okay. Well, I got, right now, I don't think the public goes down there, but mostly the city staff.
No,
So,
no, it wouldn't necessarily be people going down into the, to sit on the picnic tables. But as you can see with this image, I would put a bench there, and that access would come from the grassy area.
Okay, well, I have more questions, but let's open it to the others. I will
Kieran
wait.
has his hand raised.
Yeah,
Who?
sure. It was in
Sorry.
relation to that, inviting the public in. So Dee, first of all, I think it looks great. So good job. I like where you have the benches at the top of the slope, because I think
Right.
that helps to connect what's down below with what's up above.
Right.
You are right. That folks were sitting on those picnic tables over the summer. And I think I noticed a few of them, some of them were dragged. It was to get some shade from those trees that are up along the top too.
Right. Right. I mean, and that's kind of, in essence, this whole garden is really nice because it has a kind of a deep shade area at one end, and then the more middle area has just the one tree, and it's a smaller tree, and it does create some shade. And then on the other end of it is where most of the sun is. The kinds of plants we're going to be working with, that we're going to get, are more sun plants. So I have some ideas for ways to put in more shade plants as well. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
There's no trees being removed. Is that correct?
That's correct. No.
Okay, excellent. Because one of the things I do want to ensure, I would add in a line in the budget for a sign. I think right now when you're there, you kind of see the picnic tables down below. I mean, the first thing I looked in your proposal was, okay, is this a community space or is this just for City Hall employees? Because I think that's what the natural assumption from people will be is, I can't go down there, that's for the employees. And maybe Abby and Mike would like it that way, but I think if we're spending public funds, no, I'm joking, but we should have it accessible. And I think connecting it with the benches up top helps to make it more clear to people. But I think we should also probably be explicit and just have some sign. Let's make it pretty so it fits in with everything, but basically saying public seating area or something like that, so people know that they're invited to go sit down there. Particularly if we do our picnic thing again this summer as well, I think that would be great.
I think too, even if there's not a way for people to get to the middle of the slope, for instance, there will, even putting benches at the top or fairly close to the top, will still give people the opportunity to, be directed there with the path. But I agree. I think a sign would be really great.
And Abby and Mike, I know Mike is there. Is that something which is okay? Because I mean, without it, we are spending a lot of public money, and so far I don't think that that's how that space has been used. But
You're
yeah,
correct, Mayor. It hasn't been used for the general public. My understanding from the last CDA meeting was that this was the CDA's preference for a location for a pilot project with Dee's work. And if that is not a correct assumption, let me know. But one of the things I thought was talked about at the last meeting was that the public space adjacent, the green space next to City Hall, which has picnic tables, it has planters, and we've designed it to be more of a public space, is directly adjacent. And as Dee has drawn this up, it would also be open and available for anybody in that space with benches and an inviting look into the garden area. And we could probably accent that even further with signage. But if the CDA is at all uncomfortable with doing it because of the perception of it being just for city employees, then we could redirect Dee's efforts to a different location.
No, and Mike, just in case you're responding to my comment, I think that's the existing perception is that space, if I was to walk by, if it was an office building, I'd assume, oh, that's for the office employees. And if city employees are fine with the general public utilizing that space, then I'm supportive of the proposal and everything else. Like I'm not trying to say what I think you took from my comment, that it's, you know, we
No,
needed to be.
I just want you all to feel comfortable with the expense of city funds. I would tell you this, the outside of City Hall is completely public. It's not part of any private office space. Yes, city employees will go out there and have lunch occasionally, but it's a public building, and that's a public space outside of a public building. So if we want to make it more of a community-oriented facility, I think we can.
Right, and I think on board then. Just, it's like, yeah, let's make sure we're inviting folks down. So I
Now, we
know
could do that with signage too, is what I was suggesting,
Yeah,
because otherwise it does seem to be more like somebody else's space unless you have a sign inviting people that it is a public space.
Okay, so Ken, are you done, Ken and Mike?
yeah.
Okay,
I
so the
just
next
wanted-
one is Kathy Olson, and then there's a Kari Oaks, and then Dan Barker. And I did want to say that, you know, the putting sign there would make a difference. Until now, it has not been considered or used as a public space. Kathy,
Correct.
and then Kari, and then Dan.
Okay, could you go to page 3 of the handout to show the existing conditions? First of all, the design is beautiful. It's
Oh,
just really
thank you.
beautiful. I think the retaining wall, you know, the images that are put together are, I don't think it really depicts how tall that brick wall is.
You mean at the base?
Yes,
That's
right
oh.
there, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's quite tall. I've lived here 30 years and I didn't notice the steps there until just last week, actually. I don't think, there's no way people perceive that as being a public area, so it would need a lot of signing. 2 things, I did have a little bit of sticker shock on how much boulders cost.
You and me
And-
both.
I had a lot of, I mean, I, you know, grew up on the farm picking rocks. I would never
Right.
guess.
I agree. We've got them in our, you know, just tons of, you know, boulders that we use in our backyard, and
Yeah.
it's
They're
amazing.
very,
what they-
very
what they
heavy
can do.
pieces of art that need a
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
of attention to
Look
move
at that way.
around.
Yeah.
Big
used
equipment.
Correctly.
Also, we have to weigh this in, this is a temporary installation after they redo the city campus. What parts of this could be reused, or is this not enough for you? To me, it's an fairly big landscaping project, but that's in my world. I wish it would extend a little further into the top area where people can, if there were to be a place for a handicap, that it wouldn't just stop at the top of the what do you call it? I don't want to call it the pit, but into the lawn area. It'd be nice if there was a little something that would extend a little further there.
You mean into the grassy area?
Yeah, even
Or-
if it's like 2 or 3
Yeah.
feet into the grassy area. So if, I guess a little bit of sticker shock with this, and I'm wondering, it's a beautiful project. And is there something that some of the money would be better spent to make accommodations for some of the restaurants to be able to use the park a little better this summer, if it's like a little shade, or I'm just wondering. So I'd love to do it, but I'm just wondering how this all fits together, and if it will ever catch on as being a public area.
The vision that I sort of have, and part of it is like the lawn area, you know, is actually being used quite a bit. You know, like the kids come and play games there and sort. And so and like I said, the wooden picnic tables at the top in that grassy area are always being used. So I think, you know, even if people do not choose to come down and, you know, into the pit, it still is a transition area, you know, because it's public space, obviously, as Mike said, but it also is a transition area it's visible to everybody who uses the surrounding area.
Mhm.
So, and back to your question of, if it can be reused, or that the boulders definitely can be reused. And Mark and I have kind of routinely moved native plants around from, between gardens to, where certain areas need it and certain areas need thinning and that sort of thing. So I think that's the native plants too should be able to be reused as well.
I'm
And
just concerned with
certainly the benches.
the perception of this, of
Mhm.
investing in this kind of thing at this time. That's all. That's what I'm saying. So
But
Thank you.
Kathy, you do have a great idea that, spending about 2-3 feet into that grassy area would make a difference. And people actually would see, hey, what is there? They might come forward there. So otherwise it just looks like a private garden and
right, and
know.
even if it did extend and you put private area or public picnic area below, and or something to draw people in would maybe help. So
yeah, I'm with you. So I'm with you and Karen that if we are spending public money, it's not just like a private garden there. So next is Kathy, you're done?
I am.
Okay, next
Thank
one is
you.
Kari.
So first of all, Dee, I have to say, I love the way this looks. Like
Thank you.
I think the idea going forward of having like some native elements and some of the natural elements, but having a little more constrained design really fits with what you talked about last time. And I could see that really being a little bit of a model for like a beautiful, floral, colorful, but still environmentally appropriate way to do some of this. So like this right here, the view from southwest corner, just seeing that, like the drifting flowers and the rocks, I think it looks great. I also like it's funny because the concern about the slope I also had, and the thing about the public area, because I remember probably between 10 and 15, no, it must have been almost 15 years ago when my kids were little and I first moved here. I was walking by City Hall, and years ago, those were like a little, like a garden. People grew, there were crops grown down there in those beds. And so I just like trotted down the stairs because I was so curious. I remember because I left one of my kids up in the stroller. And so the accessibility issue I thought of when you were talking about that. And I was like, I bet they're going to come out and yell at me because I shouldn't be here. So like I really, I resonate with a lot of what everybody else is saying. But I have to say, to Mike's point, I'm confused because I think I was one who's like first threw out something about what about City Hall? And then we kind of picked up on that. And I was really confused when I saw this because in my mind, what I had been talking about, and I wasn't clear, and I'm wondering if anybody else thought I was saying this, was reworking what was in the front of City Hall a little bit. Like the natural plantings in the front, which people have, it's polarizing. And so I was wondering, A, if I was way out in left field that I was saying that and not saying it clearly. And B, if doing something like that would save it all on costs because of the native plants that could be salvaged from there and repurposed. I don't know.
I think one thing Mike and I talked about is with the front garden. I think there are certain things that I can do. As I mentioned last time, there are certain plants that are certainly out of scale to be in that area.
Yeah.
And the density is quite, is quite thick. And so, I mean, I think I'm going to be, working on that garden for a long time, but I do plan on working on it, next growing season as well. And part of it is, I think is really trying to keep it to a certain scale, and removing really the crazy tall plants, and I mean I think there are a lot of people who do who do like it as a native garden, and I can appreciate that. And you know, perhaps there's if anybody has any suggestions for me of you know, working with that garden, I'm very willing. I work on it, you know, quite a bit, so I'm very open to suggestions.
I mean, I think it's a factor of it being a native garden that there are times of year when it looks really great and times of year when it
Yeah.
just, it's just kind of showing its own plain self, because that's the way it
That's
goes.
right.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, yeah.
I would,
So, yeah, I'll stop talking in a second. I just was quickly going to say, I do appreciate Kathy's point about, you know, at this time, and I don't know if we could offer this really explicitly as additional, like shady or more quiet seating, because like Vinsanto's going to open up again. There are a lot of restaurants that are sort of situated where Sofer is midway in between the green and this could have some benefit this summer yet in that way. I'm done. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you, Kari.
Oh.
I actually agree with Kari. You were not really, we all were thinking, at least I was thinking, we will talk about it a little bit later, parking lot at the front, because as a mayor, I have gotten more complaints that about that front, you know, the prairie gardens, which is fine. And about 2017, I did try to, you know, do something about it, but it didn't go through. And I still get complaints when it's gotten a little bit better last year. So, but people, you know, especially in the fall, it's a fire hazard. So, but Dee, when you're thinking about this, if you could soften that by putting some of the rocks or, you know, some of the things which you have here,
I see
which
what
could
you're saying.
make it look like, you know, more like, you know, make it look a lot better. And that would
Yeah.
be great, because you could, you know, since you're buying stone for this one, you don't need to use all of these. If you could use some over there, where it looks like it's not just a wild garbage, that it's actually a prairie garden or something. So,
Yeah,
so
I agree. There's some rocks that are there already, but they're pretty much overwhelmed by the plant material around them. But I agree that would be it would, you know, tie in the side to the front, and it would also be more defining of it as a garden. I think that's a great idea.
and I'm sure you will do something behind the clock, because that is a Middleton clock. I didn't see in your pictures here, and I know that it's not going to look anything like what you have in this picture, but it's, you know, just to show what it could be because of that slope and all of those area down there. So Dan, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple thoughts and then a couple questions, if I may. First off, thank you, Dee. Sure appreciate you working to make our community better. With that said, I too would love to see the front kind of cleaned up, and I think the magic word I heard was definition. I think it really needs some definition, so that'd be great. Another thought, I agree with Kathy. There's a perception issue, but what I'd like to counter with a little bit is, yes, we need to help out our businesses, but we need to help out the citizens too. We need to give something for the people. It can't be all just for the job creators. We got to take care of the people that live here too. So I hear what you're saying. And one of my first thoughts was, heck yes, we need that sign. I too have walked past there many times. I'm like, oh, I can't go down there. But here's the golden lining, I think. And the natural pitch, the sizzle to the steak. What if we propose this as like a meditation Zen garden down there? It's across from the library. It's down and secluded. You've got some beautiful landscaping. You've got some areas to just hang out and be. So that's one thought. And then on to my questions. Would it be possible to maybe partner with the arts committee to bring some art in there, and then maybe the Parks and Rec to do yoga or I don't know, any mindfulness or anything? Thanks, I'll listen.
That would be wonderful. I mean, is sort of the feeling that I wanted to kind of get across is that it's a relaxing area. It's a kind of a rolling area. And so it would be a great place for art. And I guess part of it is, and what I'm hearing from a lot of folks too, is transitioning into that space with, from the lawn area. I think, that area is certainly being used, but if there's some piece of art that would go maybe at the top of the slope garden, or anything like that, it would be so very appropriate place.
Okay, so next one is Karen and then Kathy.
Looks like Chris has got his hand up ahead of me there,
Oh,
does he?
well, I didn't see it.
Oh, go
Maybe
ahead, Karen.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Chris,
okay.
no. Karen did speak already, so Chris
Oh, okay.
and
All right. Quick
Karen
comment.
and then Kathy.
Yep, thank
Chris
you.
and Karen and Kathy.
So, yeah, and thanks, Steve. It really, I agree with, was it Dan that said, trying to better the community space. This is great, and I love the conversation. Having done a fair bit of landscaping on my own personal property, the cost of this, totally fine. I have no issues with that. That seems very reasonable. And however, I do think that the biggest bang for your buck is curb appeal, and I am much more in favor of developing what we can see from the street and does feel more accessible to the community. And this is not that space. So therefore, I would not really be in favor of developing this one, even as a trial to see how it looks. We know I have absolute confidence it's going to look great. But how big of a bang for our buck, think of cost per use, whatever you want to use, that this is not going to be probably where we would want to put the resources and the effort. And I would just like to see something in a more visible spot where people have, it's easily accessible. That's it. I'm done. Thank you.
Well said, Chris. Yeah, go ahead, Dee.
Oh, I just was going to say that hopefully this is not the end of any commitment to beautifying the downtown. And I think there are a lot of great places that the strip kind of that by right in front of the library parking lot is an unused space that I think would make a beautiful garden space. There's just so many places I think, that would really benefit from some development with plants.
Okay, so next one is Karen and then Kathy.
Okay, I guess one thing that's clear from this conversation is from the meeting, if we're asking Dee or anyone else to go off and do something, we probably should be more specific as to what we're asking. I guess I hadn't even realized this was tied to our conversation from a previous meeting. I had thought we were talking about, that median in the middle of the parking lot between City Hall and the senior center. So, but having said that, I do like what I'm hearing Chris's point. And if it's a case of, well, we need to have that in your face aspect to it, this is probably not the most in your face project to do. So I think depending on what is the aim here of what we're looking to do. In terms of creating an additional usable public space, I do think this would be wonderful, with the assumption we're going to invite the public in. I like Dan's idea about art or a meditation area. In fact, the one time I was part of an organized activity in that green space was a yoga class. We had to go but then the train came along and ruined the Zen moment of it all.
Right.
Now, there's been lots of talk around the restaurant usage. One thing I noticed over last summer when we had the Pick Your Picnic campaign is this area was not used nearly as much as Stonehorse Green. And I don't know if that's because, well, Hubbard was really the only restaurant that was offering takeout stuff close to it. And Hubbard has its own outdoor tables, which may have been an issue. But if we could get people to expand to use this space as well, it'll help in a number of ways. Crowding, litter, all the rest of it, plus just utilizing that space. There's not even as much kids there playing there as I would always like to see. My own kids, they prefer to go to Dinosaur Park down by the old Elm Lawn School. So it would be great if we could make it a more attractive and usable space. But I think what we need to be important is what spaces are we talking about when we're tasking you with something? And then to Chris's point, what is the goal of this? Is it to show the citizenry that here's what we're doing, or here's what a sample of what we can do in other parts of downtown? I think that's an important question. And for what it's worth, I really like the front of City Hall with the prairie plants and all the insects and everything, but maybe I just like the wild look. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do think that there are ways to sort of meld it into something that a lot more people can enjoy.
SCD had shown those 5 different concepts, 5 or 6, whatever the size, the color, and some of those things, the height. And you know, some of those possibly could be used there. And where if you use those, some of the stones to soften some of those things, where it looks like, you know, more like a garden. So, and anyway, Kathy?
While I had my hand up and you mentioned the area across by the library parking lot, you're right, that could be easily, well, it's, you know, I may say easy, but maybe it's not, but I mean, adding something to that could really help spread this around. And I'm wondering from a cost, if we could, if like, I don't mean to pick your plan apart, but like benches, it seems like we have an abundance of the Middleton benches. If something like that, if we could take that $1,300 and reallocate it to making improvements in the front of City Hall. And we have, I know the planters are completely different style, but we have some planters too. But I just was wondering if the benches, since we have so many of the Middleton ones, if that would be something we could use instead of purchasing new ones and use the money. Yes, there you go, Abby.
That's the space.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have been wanting that forever. And in 2017 fall, I even spent money to plant, my own money to plant some bulbs. And I was kind, some people helped them. I mean, I provided the bulbs and somebody else planted them, but unless you take care of them and do something, you know, it doesn't happen. So that is the area, and then the area along the Terrace Avenue. That's what, you know, I mean, having that barren space there, it makes you sort of ashamed that, you know, there was a time when that looked great, but it is that if you don't maintain things, and I thought that there was no department in the city who had the maintenance responsibility, but lo and behold, I got the response from our city administrator. Yes, there is a sound department which is supposed to maintain them. And yeah, right along that Terrace Avenue, it just, there was a time when those looked awesome. And we still got some plants there, but there are more weeds than plants. And I have people who are willing to work and who are willing to even donate plants, and we could even have some friends group. People want this area to look better, and they're willing to, you know, contribute to whatever way they can. And so we don't want a, you know, like Chris said and Dan said, and Karen and Kathy and Kari said, you know, it has to be a public space, not a private garden. So if we can make this open and with signs, and also standing a little bit in that green space where people think that, well, this is something, you know, where they can go and they can use. If it adds to that, that's fine. But the areas which are really in need is that what along that Herbert Avenue close to the library and Terrace, and also fixing the front of the City Hall so that I don't get all those calls and emails. And some of them I actually, from one lady, I saved it because it is just so angry and so mad. So I mean, I know you normally want to say where people say you're doing a great job, you're what an awesome mayor. You know, we all like that, but you also want to hear when people are unhappy about something. So it's still there. So Anybody else? No, I don't. Oh, okay. Mike Davis and then Katie Nelson. Mike,
Yeah, I
you're up.
just wanted to mention that one of the reasons that we're getting into this with D is so that we find a long-term sustainable maintenance program for the city. And I had mentioned that the last time we meet, because our resources are so stretched and we're not adding staff and we won't be adding staff likely for the foreseeable future. And so this is another means of which to try to extend our resources by, developing a program like D has that's sustainable maintenance over a long period of time, and then adding things on a case-by-case basis when we have capital projects, or as the CDA wants to do in the downtown on a regular basis. But those are the means by which we can do that in a sustainable way over a long period of time.
I'd like to add to that. I think one of the most important things about planning for areas downtown is to have a very purposeful, concept that ties all of it together, not necessarily like piecemeal. I think the one reason that the municipal parking lots that, behind the library suffers so much from problems is that you can kind of tell through the years where something was added here and something was taken away here and something, kind of worked out here. And the other thing is that plants do age and die. There are certain, plants that have just lived their natural lives, and these kind of things need to be, it's not a question of weeding or maintenance or anything, as much as it is, in my opinion, planning purposefully and not and being really, really aware of what plants do and how they can be designed into an area and for a purpose. And so I think looking at it in a more whole way is really critical. I think, we could do a garden and tie that into another area and tie that into another area. I mean, I think, I'm happy to do designs for any of these areas. I would love to see those come into fruition. But like I say, it's not a question of, randomly collecting plants and putting them somewhere and hoping they do well. It really is about design and planning.
Okay, so the next one is Katie, then Kathy, and then Karen.
So I agree with Dee that things need to look tied in together. And so I love the idea, whoever had it earlier, to do kind of the same look in the front of City Hall and on the side. And I think even though it isn't going to be bang for your buck from the street, it makes City Hall look kept up, to have that side garden, to have that look nice. And Kathy's idea of using the city benches might help relay the message that it's a public area for people to use. So I like the idea of using those city logo benches in whatever plan we do on the side. So yeah, that's it.
Also, I mean, that space at the bottom, if you create certain functions where the public, gets more accustomed to being down there and sharing that space, I think, it can never be a bad thing to have people more connected to City Hall and the downtown area.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Right now, that space has been mostly wasted. So, okay, so the next one is was Kathy or what was Kathy or Kari? Kathy and Kari.
Well, mine's a quick comment. Nabby, I was glad you didn't change the screen on here. I'm looking at the pine tree. And Dee, do you know how long that's going to be there? Because I think once that's gone, we'll have to do something anyway. So
I don't, I mean, as long as it's living and it's used as a holiday tree.
I heard it was dying is what I
Oh,
was.
I see. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's certainly the top end is kind of cut off. I'm not sure. And it, it's, I mean, it is going to outgrow that space. They can grow pretty big. So,
So you don't think it's going to die within the next couple years anyway? Okay.
I
No,
don't-
no, this tree is quite healthy, Kathy. It's,
Oh, okay.
I don't know
How do
what
you have
happened to
underneath?
the top, so, but no, this tree is pretty good, so. Okay, so the
I-
next one
I-
is,
Mayor, could I speak up real
oh,
quick?
go ahead.
I don't think our city forester agrees with you on that. I think he has come close to taking it down already, but I can check with him and get back to all of you, but I don't want to give false hopes that it's going to last for another couple of years.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mark is
What's-
definitely more of an.
Yeah,
expert.
along with the reason that what happened at the top, I thought it was because of the electric lights and,
He said, what Mark Wagner told me is that these trees die from the top. And so it was really dead on the top
Oh.
and they cut it off.
Mhm.
And then what he's been trying to do is hold on to it for long enough until the Stone Horse Green is developed, because then we can move the holiday tree lighting down there. And we're hoping this will hold on long enough for that to happen.
okay, I'd be happy to talk to him, so I guess, okay,
Okay.
let's not get into that right now. So, okay, so the next one is Kari, right?
Yeah,
Kari, yes.
I just had a quick thought while somebody else was talking about that. It could be a great, like, to have kids story hour or something like that, except for ADA concerns in that little bowl down there.
Mhm.
Because I think
Yeah.
this summer there's going to be opportunities to do more stuff, but not everything inside. So.
Could they
but-
go through the city hall if it was ADA? They could go through city hall and get out onto that patio.
They
I mean,
can,
yeah.
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 That
so I
would
mean,
be,
that's- yeah,
that
I
would
could
be
see it
pretty
being-
hard, Kathy, though. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
apologize.
But I just had a question for Abby and Mike, which was, and whoever, what do you think the realistic timeline is for breaking ground for any community campus thing now? Because I think we should consider that in this discussion.
2025 at the earliest. That's my guess, but I don't really know for certain. What
So
would
we
you?
have 4 years out of this then, and then the ability to repurpose some of the hardscaping and a lot of the plantings.
But remember, the city council has not voted on it, so that's if it goes through, so,
No, it would just be like best case earliest would be 2025.
yeah,
Okay.
if it does happen, so. Anyone else? Okay, so what I really hear is that, I mean, our big focus still would be the front of the city hall. If we can combine this, if it's, we will spend the money if it is a public space, not if it looks like a private garden. And I agree with Chris and Dan and Karen and the others and Kari. So it has to be a public space, not just some private little area there. So Mike, you probably would have some thoughts. We are putting that money to build those stairs. Could they be built in a way, right now they're pretty steep. So if there is some way to soften it so that there's a easier way, they're somewhat easier than what they are now. So at least maybe you can have some conversations with whoever is building that and
I think
also
it's just a repair project for this year.
oh, it's replacing it. It's $30,000. So anyway,
Oh.
it's quite,
Okay,
it's
didn't realize that.
And if it could be, those stairs could be built in a way that it becomes, the lower part becomes more like a, it's more like a public space, could be wider or something could be done to it. So that would make a difference. So I think, and the other is that we have to address, probably in my mind, I have always tried to get something along that Hubbard Avenue west of the library. And, it hasn't really gone very far. I get the most complaints about that. And I get the most complaints about the Terrace Avenue, that it makes city look not very good. And I don't like to hear complaints, but I guess that's part of my job. And then I have gotten lots of complaints about the front of the city hall. And as I told you, I have still some of the message still on my phone recorded. So I think, so D, and for others, I think if you can combine at least the front of the city hall, and we make this a open space, not just for, the city employees. And Mike, if we are doing those stairs, talk to whoever is doing it, that the stairs could be done in a way that looks like, could be wider, so that it looks like a public space rather than just, the employees going in and out. So that would be very helpful. So in 2018, I had gotten one of the firms to look at the AL landscaping at the Terrace Avenue along the railroad and along this library thing. So then the floods came and everything got held up. So I do have a quotation, and I could actually ask D to look at that stuff which they have proposed, and it seems like a reasonably priced, but anyway, we could bring it to the CDA at next time. So, but right now we have to decide that where we want to spend our money. If it is a public space, from what I look at all these pictures, which I think, and it includes using some of the benches as Kathy has proposed, and then also combining the front of the city hall, I guess I feel comfortable with that. So, but we can't just ignore that those parking lots. It has been a problem for a long time, so we can't just sit here and not do something about it. That's how I feel about it. And I want to make sure that the money which you are using is used properly, and it's for the public good. All public, businesses as well as people. Any other input from someone? Otherwise, I guess we will have to vote on it. So, Kathy, you have seemed like you want to say something.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's enough changes that we were looking for that we'd want to come back with just a little more definition.
Okay, all right. So
D, I want to know how much what you think of that, if that's a lot of.
No, I think it's a natural extension of what I've been working on. So
Okay.
I mean, if it's okay with Mike, I can certainly.
Yes, and also if we can, Mike can work on the stairs and see whether we could make it more welcoming to the public. Assuming, I hope we will talk to the Public Works Department, because those employees, for them, it's their window. So before you make a commitment, or before I make a commitment, it probably would be a good idea to talk to the Public Works Department.
Are we talking about the slope garden? Is that what you meant, Kathy, by your comment?
Slope garden and the front, and combining this, and combining Kathy's idea of having 2 of those benches and saving 1,400 from there, and maybe using that 1,400 for the front of the city hall. Did I summarize it properly?
What you're suggesting is not using the benches on the slope garden area.
I'm not buying new benches, using some Middleton benches that we already have. I think we have extras of those. I know the library, there's like 5 of them or something.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. So we can just throw money around. So anybody else? So D, if you have enough input, well, Dan Barker. Yes, Dan, you're up.
Thanks, Mayor. I certainly don't mean to drag this out any longer, but you've brought up some good points, and I think the scope has grown beyond. I'm wondering if we could maybe split this out. We've got this one project here, but I think you bring up some very valid points on Terrace Avenue and the street right across from City Hall, that area there. I'm wondering if we could make some sort of mention that we'd like to get some from D, some design and ideas for both of those as an idea moving forward.
Excellent, excellent. And I will also show some of the stuff which I have and get her opinion, because I did have one landscape company submit that stuff to me. So awesome. I like that, Dan. Okay, so do you have enough input? So we are going to let you work on it, and we're going to move on to the next item. Thank you.
That sounds
And
great.
thank you.
I'll do
Thank
that.
you, everyone. You guys are awesome.
Before you move
Okay.
on to it,
Hmm?
I'm not sure what we're doing. Are you asking Dee to come back with a new report? Or are you authorizing expenditures minus the 2 benches for the slope guard?
No, we are not authorizing the expenditure. We are authorizing her to come back with incorporating the ideas which the CDA members have.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, no, it's not approval. It's the adding all those and using those ideas and come up with something. So. Is that clear, Dee?
It is, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 3, overview of the TIF in Middleton. Well, do we really want to? Okay, so somebody can do it quickly, right? Who's doing that?
I can do it really quickly. I just have
Okay.
4 slides
Okay,
that I
ready.
took from Bill's presentation
Awesome.
that he gave to the council recently. So this was something that you asked for at the last meeting.
Yes.
It's just a brief overview of TIF. I'm sure our elected officials know all of this, but it might be new to some of the other members. Just really quickly, what is TIF? TIF is tax incremental financing, which is different than TID, which is the tax incremental district, or the area in which a TIF is put into place. When a TID is created, the current value of all the property in the TID continues to be available for all of the taxing jurisdictions. So here in Middleton, we have 4 separate taxing jurisdictions. And one of the common misconceptions about creating a TID is that all of a sudden the taxes don't go to the taxing jurisdictions, and that's not the case. The base value does continue to be available for all of the taxing jurisdictions. 100% of the new value, which is referred to as value increment in a TID, is retained by the city for projects within the TID. So this is what makes tax increment financing a really powerful tool for the city for economic development, because that new value is about just over 3 times more than the amount of value that the city would generally get from the TIF district. So not only does that help us incentivize private development projects with the value increment, but it also helps to pay for projects that are generally beneficial to the TIDs, including, we have a project coming up in TID number 5, which is to replace the Century Avenue Bridge to put the Pheasant Branch Conservancy Trail beneath Century Avenue. And that is going to be paid for using tax increment financing. Upon the closure of a TID, 100% of the full value is available for all of the taxing jurisdictions. And TIF is the primary economic development tool in Wisconsin. Other states use tax abatement and other economic development incentives, but TIF is pretty much it for us here in Wisconsin. I love this graph. It really summarizes the way that TID works. So you can see when the TID is created in this year along this timeline, all of the base value, tax value, is still continuing to go to Dane County, the Middleton School District, the technical college, as well as the city. The amount of value increment as it grows over time, as projects are happening within the TIF district and we're able to incentivize additional development, it's the value increment that is kept within the TIF district to incentivize projects and to pay for city infrastructure projects. When the TID is terminated after usually about 30 years, then that growth is returned to all of the taxing jurisdictions, and they also receive a one-time payment for any increment that remains at the end of the life of the TID. Let's see, I think that this is the only other slide that I was going to share two more. So creating and amending a TIF district requires approval of the governing body and a joint review board. And the joint review board includes representatives of each of the 4 taxing jurisdictions. They meet annually regardless of if there are any changes happening within a TIF district. Last year, we did a major subtraction from TIF District 3 to return value to each of the taxing jurisdictions. We subtracted over $1 million in property valuation, and that I think is, there have been 4 subtractions to TIF District 3 over time. The Joint Review Board is also responsible for approving a project plan that lists the types of projects that are allowed to be for the use of TIF funding, and also spending that's planned within a TID. The state puts a limit on the amount of assessed valuation that a city can have within a TID, and that limit is 12%. Right now, Middleton's valuation within TID is well over that, and it's because the property value has grown over time, which is exactly what you want to use TIF districts for, and it's caused us to grow to about 17.6% early this year of our valuation within a TID. After the major subtraction we did from TIF 3, we're projected to be at about 16.5%. And this map is just showing the 2 active TIF districts within the city. The blue is TIF District 3. This is one of the 2 largest and most successful TIF districts in the state. We've been able to do a significant amount of projects, and this is also the TIF district that covers downtown Middleton. And then in the red, you can see our newer TIF district, which is TIF 5, and it has been slower to start, but recently, within the last couple of years, we've seen a significant number of projects happening within TIF 5, like the Middleton Market, Cardinal View Senior Housing, Meadow Ridge, Oak Ridge, the Trotta, and many other projects, and those are really starting to generate significant increment into TIF District 5. We are going to look at doing an amendment to TIF 5 to subtract some property that is not likely to redevelop the Spring Tree Apartments in this area, and then to look at adding some additional property, because the only time we can add property since we're over that 12% limit is when we're subtracting property simultaneously. So we're going to try to add some property along Lake Street and the public boat launch that Middleton has, the limited lakefront property we have available in the city. We're also going to try to overlay some properties within TIF District 3 that have not developed, even though TIF 3 has been in place for decades. We'd like to move those to TIF 5 because TIF 5 has 6 more years of life. It expires in 2036. And we're also going to be adding the Studio West project, which is located here primarily because we have public infrastructure needs. We need to extend Bellefontaine Road to Parmenter Street. And then we're hopeful that we might even be able to add some properties along Century Avenue to TIF District 5. The areas that are shown in purple are the overlay district. And those areas, once they are overlaid, function as if they are in TIF District 5, but they've been overlaid into 2 separate districts. We have had a lot of talk recently about creating a new TIF district. We can't do it until TIF 3 closes. And it's possible that we could close TIF District 3 early. That's one thing that we've started talking about with our finance director is, you know, maybe there's a possibility of closing it in 2027 or 2028, which would enable the city to create a new TIF district sooner. And what we're looking at is creating a TIF that would cover University Avenue on both sides. And then also hopefully to overlay the downtown, because we've pretty much always kept the downtown in a TIF district, just so we can continue to reinvest and reinvigorate the downtown. And that is all that I wanted to share with you, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and Mike can help out with questions too.
Questions for Abby or Mike? Okay, Dan Barker.
Just real quick, what made it so successful, and do we think we can have further successes like that?
Yeah, what made it so successful is that most of the land that was put into TIF 3 initially was greenfield sites, but they required a significant amount of infrastructure in terms of stormwater improvements. And so the city created TIF District 3 and then made stormwater management one of the primary focuses of the TIF. And then they created the confluence pond, and that infrastructure project enabled a significant amount of development. And because the base value was so low on many of those properties, there wasn't, it wasn't a redevelopment TIF. These properties were greenfield sites. And because of the significant amount of job growth that has happened in those areas, like, major corporate headquarters, Spectrum Brands, ETC, Fiskars, and others, that has been, I think, what made it so successful. Mike's been around for more of it, so he can share his thoughts too. On your second question, oh, go ahead, Mike.
I would just add to what Abby said, because all what she said is true, but I think by having the downtown as an appendage to the Greenfield area enabled the downtown to benefit from the success of the area west of the Beltline. And we've seen that with the reinvestment in the downtown as well. So I wasn't here to design the TIF district, but that clearly there was almost a Robin Hood type of effect there to benefit the downtown as well.
Any other questions?
And for the
for
second
Mike?
question that you had, Dan, we aren't probably going to have a TIF district ever that's as successful as TIF 3, because most of what we're going to be looking at is redevelopment. The city's really limited in terms of additional growth area, and redevelopment is harder because you've got base value already associated with the land. Like what happened with Middleton Center, we already had a 2-story building that had significant assessed valuation already. So the amount of tax increment between going from the 2-story to the 5-story building, it's not going to be as much as it would be if the land was a greenfield site.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby and Mike.
Great job, Abby, and great job, Mike. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we move on to the last item on the agenda.
All right, you want to take me to take that one, Abby?
Yes, sure.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
this
Yeah.
is stemming from our conversation last time when we're just looking at the long-term sustainability for the CDA, recognizing that as the TIF, the TIF is essentially what keeps the CDA afloat on an annual basis, right? The funds coming in from there. And if that expires in 2025, what's the future for the CDA? Do we just draw down the resources, the money that we have essentially? Which, as you recall from our last conversation, there's 646,000 on the accounts for the CDA held as cash essentially. So the first thing was, I had raised the question of, is that really just cash? Shouldn't we be putting it to work somehow? And Abby had arranged a conversation with a subgroup from this committee, which consisted of Dan and Kathy and myself, and we met with the finance director, Bill Burns, today. So first of all, and whether the money is being put to work, it is, right? So it's on our account listed as cash, in that it would be liquid should we need it. But in reality, it's pooled with other city resources and invested in capital preservation investments like CDs and bonds and so on. Last year, it earned around 1.3%. So the money is not just sitting in a checking account; it is being put to work. Is the first thing to report back to the committee. The other aspect then is what could we do with that? So again, looking forward, how can we make the CDA more sustainable? You know, if we have that capital of around 650,000, what can we do with it to potentially invest to generate future returns so we can have a self-funded sustaining CDA? So first of all, Bill had highlighted the particular statute that covers financial investments, and we're under the same constraints that any city or municipality is under, and that's fine, you know. And I think the conversation last time, we were thinking more around what other potential investments can we invest in the downtown ourselves. So with respect to investing in property, that is possible. We can invest in property, new property. We can invest in improvements to the property that's already owned by the CDA, which is the building the senior center is in. So those are possible with the finance that we have, the capital that we have essentially within the remit of the CDA. So that's the upshot of the information back from our conversation with Bill. And to that end, I think we should all, you know, give it some thought, have some discussion on what you think you might want to do as a committee, or what we might want to discuss on potential plans with that. I mean, the other option is we just keep doing what we're doing and we just gradually draw that down over time with the kind of activities that we're doing at the CDA, but that would inevitably lead to a point in time where, you know, there's no more funding from the CDA for those kind of activities. Now, Abby, Bill had also suggested something in his email around being able to get a lump sum payment towards the end of the TIF period. So in 2024, 2025, that would bridge us forward. And I guess that from the conversation we've just had, that bridge would be to the next the next TID, essentially, the next tax investment district. Would that be correct?
Yep. Yeah, that would have to be approved by the council, but we could
Right.
certainly request that.
Yeah, and actually that would be one of the other things that came up in the conversation as well, is while the CDA is independent, we also do have, it's set up that we do want to get approval from city councils for major expenditures and so on as well, which basically I think is a check and balance to ensure that whatever we're doing with the CDA has got public support. So to recognize that any conversations we will have, we're ultimately going to need to get such an expenditure approved by the city council as well. And I think I got that right, Abby and Mike. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the city council approves the annual budget. If
Right.
you want to spend funds outside of the annual budget, like what came before you tonight with Dee's proposal, that I believe should go to the city council as an amendment to the approved budget.
Right. Thank you for the clarification.
Any questions for Ken, Mike, or Abby, or me? So, wow. Well, I guess maybe next time we should have an item for just discussing how CDA could be more effective, getting more money, but also doing more with what we have. So how can we make sure that every dollar used is used wisely and we are getting more out of it? So I think, yeah, we can have some time discussing that. Anything else from anyone before we adjourn? Belinda, what is the words of wisdom, or Andrea?
I'm not sure I have any words of wisdom. Yeah, not at this point. I'm not sure.
I
Neither
like
do
the
I.
London Bridge in the background there, looks nice.
Yeah, I'm long on vacation again at some point.
Andrea, how about you?
No words of wisdom. Fire pit tables are going strong. I guess that's some words of happiness.
All right.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was shocked, pleasantly surprised to see so many people out on the picnic tables last weekend. That was
Good.
really enjoyable. So I think we're all excited for spring.
Thank you to CDA, and thank you to Abby, Mike, and everyone else, and to all of you guys. You made this happen. So, okay, in that case, need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, second. Okay, motion by Ken, maybe second by Belinda. right? So all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
I.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned, and thank you, thank you, thank you.